let's continue and go to the panel discussions. We have a great topic, new opportunities to take leadership role. And let me introduce Tiina Alahuhta-Kasko. Tiina is the CEO of Marimekko, well-known design brand. And Tiina served as Chief Operating Officer and Chief Marketing Officer of the company before being appointed as a CEO. And I must say Marimekko's growth has been extraordinary in the past few years. It's really important to hear what Tiina has got to say. And then we have also Indrek Kasela, a person who is a very professional in the private equity and tech sector. He's the founder of Yhinettut Inglit, and presently Indrek is the chairman of the management board of PR Foods, and also chairman at Saarenmeren Kala. So warmly welcome, Indrek. You are a great speaker for a cross-border cooperation. So interesting to see and hear what you have to say. So Maria, over to you.
Yeah, thank you, Jorma, for an interesting speech. One dimension here that I think we should talk a little bit about is sort of the what startups and new kids on the block can learn from larger and established companies, and also sort of how you see the need for disruption versus more incremental change. And you know, my hypothesis would be that larger, older corporates would work in a more sort of incremental, continuous change way, whereas startups maybe work in a more disruptive way. And you know, given the challenges we face, do we need both, or what is needed the most? So those are some of the topics we would like you to comment on during this panel. Indrek, would you like to start?
I can definitely. When I was thinking about the subject, I was actually I liked it very much like Jorma's presentation and talking about that we circle around the word culture, which is obviously the best way to engage people. And but if we extend that, I'm talking about how to engage society. So I come from Estonia, which is economy-wise, we only have SMEs. So I find actually three themes super important when you talk about leadership in overall. It's the how do we sort of bring aboard on board also the SMEs, of the micro businesses. It's very easy to talk about sustainability when you have hundreds of millions deployed. But you know, 90 to 99% of the economy is made up of family and micro and SMEs. So and I think is really what I call a generational conflict, and is there a conflict? Is what I call the glorification of youth and disruption. And I think third is very important is the skill to saying goodbye to legacies. As I always say, it's much easier to fall in love than to break up. And we as a society need to also accept that maybe we should let go. And what is the cost of society of you know, delaying the sort of transformation? So I think the leadership skills today, because of the interactive nature and integration of the ecosystem into your businesses, goes far beyond traditional communication and just you know, talking to employees. I mean, the companies are a petri dish, but at the same time they are under the microscope of entire societies as a forms on how to maybe transform the society. We don't see that leadership coming, unfortunately, today from the political world. So I think it's very much up to the companies to show the way forward.
Indrek, can you mention a few concrete things that you actually would like us to say goodbye to then?
I think, you know, there's a lot of talk about, like, the what I call a traditional sort of traditional economies, like in the sense of the mining, etc. And it's very interesting to talk about this, that, you know, it depends what your perspective is, you know, is mining bad or not? I mean, yes, for a consumer it appears very bad, but the same consumer wants to hold on to his iPhone, and you can't have that without sort of mining. But I would actually take a very quickly a different example in a sense of how to maybe solve these things. And I quite often talk about how the ex-Skypers, the Estonian team, started something like, how they tackled a waste management issue, for example. They back in 2008, they started something called Let's Do It. So basically a national campaign and voluntary, and very much parts of our national DNA as well, which I think in Finnish is talvot. So geomapping illegal dump sites, 50,000 people gathered over the weekend, totally for free, companies, etc., and basically just cleaned up the roadsides, etc. I mean, fast forward 10 years, it's now called World Cleanup Day with 156 countries. And so totally pro bono. So sometimes, this when help comes from not from within the sector, but totally outside. So, and I think it's important that we do help for these industries rather than just condemn them, because society has to function. So I think that will be the ones, a non-traditional as an example. But we have other people on the panel as well, so please.
Maybe you can take a kind of an example from the industry that I represent, the global fashion industry. And I guess that we all know that the fashion business altogether contributes to a significant part of the annual global carbon emissions. So basically, one could say that the fashion industry is a non-sustainable legacy business. And to the question of whether disruptions or continued improvements are needed, I think both are needed, but in a non-sustainable legacy business, it goes without saying that disruptions are needed, and they are urgently needed in order to solve this big issue that the whole industry is challenged. And as Indrek said, these matters will not be solved without within industry, but especially without cross-industry collaboration.
Just continuing a little bit about what Indrek was mentioning, you have background from Shell and also like from the media business, and we can see a sort of like also polarizing effects. As an example, for instance, both the Guardian newspaper and Dagens Nyheter have both said that they won't accept advertisement anymore from those companies that are, from the legacy fossil, business. What do you think about that? Is that going too far already?
Yeah, making strong ethical statements and trying to enforce changes in behavior in the marketplace with strong ethical plea or request in the media. It goes a little bit against the sort of understanding of how I see. I mean, business enterprises should be directed by other means into doing the right thing, so to speak. So that's why I'm, for instance, in favor of either a carbon tax or a trading scheme which leads into a price of carbon, because businesses can adapt to changing price paradigms, and they are very, very good. Best businesses are really good at adapting into price signals, and I would accept therefore a market mechanism used into changing behavior towards what is long-term clearly the right thing. Media making that sort of a statement, it's not really in that bag of the tricks that I would prefer.
Mm-hmm.
Because I believe in the strength of the market mechanism, and this goes a little bit against that stream.
How much polarization? I mean, you face, Tiina. If you think you mentioned that your business is kind of could be portrayed as a legacy business with some sort of track record, not being very sustainable. So how much that drives your efforts to modernize and be proactive?
Well, I have to say that we're living in extremely interesting times in our industry, because the pandemic has really, within the past year or so, accelerated some of the industry dynamics and mega trends that we've seen shaping out already in the past years. And two of them being the biggest ones, digitalization and then sustainability. And what we can see now happening in the global fashion industry is indeed the polarization. And with the polarization, we mean that that on one hand, due to the pandemic, through the recession climate and price sensitivity of consumers, we can see that the sort of value segments do still get some traction. At the same time, on the other hand, we can find consumers increasingly looking for more sustainable solutions, gravitating towards brands and choices that base on meaningful sustainable values, on quality, timelessness. Consumers are increasingly becoming aware and interested in learning how to lead more sustainable lives. And I think that is obviously the opportunity that we're very excited about at Marimekko, understanding that our values and DNA since the beginning have been based on a sustainable approach. And hence we've been very recently also updating our sustainability development ambitions to yet much more ambitious level. So we think that this is an opportunity for us to not only live according to our values. Sustainable development is an enabler for us to fulfill our mission as a company, but at the same time, we can see it opening up completely new kinds of value driving opportunities to serve our customers and in the long run build competitive advantage.
So actually also gravitating like new potential and gravitating professionals, that are willing to make the change as well, as perspective of managing, new people to come in.
Definitely. And I think that as companies, we also have the responsibility, the opportunity and the responsibility to take the consumers along with us to this sustainability journey. So it's about educating, being transparent. We take huge pride and have set our own ambition in these matters high up. But definitely we do see this as a responsibility also for us.
I have a follow-up question to Tiina, but I've noticed that Indrek wants to come in. So Indrek first.
I think we are entering a very interesting area now, because obviously ESG and sustainability is no longer a catchword, and what it used to be before, I would say, it was in a way to extract additional profit from a customer, or basically explaining why your products are more expensive. But I would say is that real sustainability requires an end goal is really better efficiency, hence better affordability. And I use the comparison with the fintechs and the banks, and why it's no longer just important to be sustainable, but to be affordably sustainable. But no fintech can go to the market and say, "Oh, we offer you a better service, hence it is more expensive." But it's just that value proposition would not fly very, very far. But when they're saying that we're doing something better, hence it becomes a more democratic, universal, and affordable. So I think for the leadership challenge is not just using solar, using wind, etc., but how to also make your products and services more universal. Because from the consumer side, it is no longer a privilege and a requirement from a select few, and sort of to get to acquire sort of feel-good factor. But it's really the 99% of the global population that has not had the chance to be sustainable. And I have an interesting experiment here as well, was that I also sit on the board of a national grid company. And the huge problem for us is with sustainable energy, the renewables, is that the grid, the electrical grid, is not built for them. So what we're facing is a massive amount of capex in the coming years because of the instability of the renewables adding to the, and it will shorten the life of copper wire. And instead of nowadays going that, you know, dear customers, we have this huge capex because renewables, and hence we need to increase the prices. We had an experiment where we said, listen, consumers, and we had actually, it was a Finnish city, and conversion rate was 30%. We said, why don't we pay you 100 euros a year so that you will become more sensible consumers? And I think that's what we need to do, is really like push out the economic benefit. And plus it was economically, it was much better to share the benefit with the consumer rather than using as a justification to say why you need to pay more.
Mm-hmm.
Incentives seems to matter. Tiina, you mentioned cross-sectorial partnerships, and partnerships, collaborations, public-private, so on and so forth, has really been the red thread today throughout the Future Forum. So on all panels, we have come back to sort of the need for thinking and working together with multiple stakeholders. And one example from your industry that was mentioned by Annika Bresky from Stora Enso was that they are working together with H&M on using wood to create textile. So could you mention the kind of partnerships you were alluding to when you talked about it earlier?
Yeah, definitely. So when we look at the overall kind of environmental footprint of the fashion industry, naturally the textile materials play a big role in that. And for example, at Marimekko, our goal is to reduce our environmental footprint of our textile materials by 30% by 2025. And the way to do that is, first of all, adopting in our usage more sustainable materials, but in order to be able to progress, especially beyond the 30%, which is the initial milestone target for us, we need innovations within the materials. And for example, for us at Marimekko, it has meant that we have already for years been participating in similar types of new, more sustainable innovation research and development projects. We have our own textile printing factory here in Helsinki, which also allows us to take a proactive stand and help in the kind of commercialization studying of these new materials. A great example is also comes from Finland. This new technology by the fiber technology company Spinnova that also utilizes a wood-based fiber that is created without any harmful chemicals, that is biodegradable and circular. So these types of new innovations will be needed, and there's a high increasing demand around the world in our industry for these types of new solutions. I personally really hope that we're able to capitalize on these opportunities in Finland.
What would just a quick follow-up? What would be your sort of dream out of the box partnership, if you could pick sort of one industry to collaborate with, or one company, or one institution?
So when it comes to sustainability at Marimekko, we take a holistic view. So we look at the entire value chain, starting from raw materials to the end of use and use of the products. So similarly, when we look at materials, we look into all different types of new innovations also within the material development. So the Spinnova's technology made fiber is one example. So I mean, For us, it's a matter of being able to tap in and utilizing and commercializing in the future, hopefully many of them. But what I also meant about it with my earlier comment about capitalizing on these new innovations is that I think it's exciting that from the traditional industries in Finland, we've been able to find these new pockets of innovations that might actually in a big way be able to serve the demands, the growing sustainability demands of the global fashion and textiles industry.
There is a question from the audience. How can more leaders emerge for sustainability? How can more be convinced of the necessary mind shift that Jorma, Ollila and the others spoke about, transformational change? So where are these leaders emerging? And are they like newcomers, or can we change who are already in the field? What do you think?
I think there are basically two answers. The first one is that in the startup sector segment or genre, there are always people who emerge, and I think they should get the right kind of support and a little bit of mentoring. Hopefully, they can use that to their benefit. And then in somewhat larger companies, the old story is that leaders develop leaders. So the right kind of mentoring, I think it should is a key here. So it should be for a true sustainable leader. There should be a particular responsibility to develop the personalities who have the right mindset, and to pick the certain people who are receptive, find them, give them support in their career, and give them much more responsibility and resources than they would seem to deserve. So it's about this risk taking. You have to put your money and resources where there's a receptive personality, where there's the right kind of project. And this is how true leaders emerge, if they get the right kind of support for their wild new ideas, which typically are not small developments for the next year or so, but which are really radical.
Leaders create leaders. What do you think, Indrek? You are in so many different companies.
Yeah, I think sit on board of both traditional companies like media companies and startups. I think there are two things: peer pressure, and then hang out with the like-minded people. If you don't find it within your own industry, just go outside. I had an interesting experience. So when I heard that Markus resigned as a head of design of IKEA, also as a venture capitalist come fish farmer. So I called him up, and it was interesting because he was an avid fisherman, and he was like, listen, there hasn't been any innovation for I don't know how many years. So, who would have think that the former head of design of IKEA in his free time, we were not talking about packaging, it's just the overall concept of what to do to fish. So I think that is the great thing about now, because it's so popular and popular in both the sense that it's so widespread, and it's really, in any possible ways, it is so beneficial to you to actually follow the, which is the largest sort of mega trend at the moment. So finding a like-minded person outside, if you feel like, it's like a classroom. If you've been bullied in your sector, just go and hang out with other cool kids, and that would be my thing. But yeah, there's peer pressure and hang out with cool people.
All right. Any other thoughts? Along the road, Tiina, have you
So I also believe in the power of inspiring examples. So again, kind of giving a couple of maybe examples from the fashion industry. So where we can see, sustainable forerunners actually coming from different angles. So first of all, we have these sort of companies and brands who have been ahead of their time and who've had sustainability at the core of their approach, while at the same time driving a positive change overall in the industry, like Patagonia, for example. And at the same time, we have these sort of platforms that are accelerating the positive change in the whole industry. So giving a couple of examples, for example, Copenhagen Fashion Week being the first fashion week to set minimum sustainability requirements for brands to participate since 2023. Similar approach with Zalando, the online fashion and lifestyle e-tailer, also imposing sustainability requirements being mandatory for brands that they represent from 2023 onwards, and multiple similar kind of examples. And then we also, as a third group, have the disruptors. And in our industry, these disruptors might come from, they might relate to, for example, pre-owned fashion resale sites. So companies like Vesture Collective, the Real Reels, that are really reshaping the whole way of buying a premium or even luxury fashion in this world and changing consumer behavior. So I think all of these different kinds of examples coming from different angles in the industry are providing excellent, inspiring examples for others to join along.
I think this has been really, really inspiring. Thank you very much indeed for the whole panel. I think we got really new ideas, and you know, it's not about greenwashing. It's something which is much more thoroughly, and it's changing the businesses, you know, overall globally. And so so thank you very much indeed for this session.